You don't get to choose the message, only the urgency. The word you carry is sealed, sacred, and perhaps lethal. No one tells you what it means. All you know is that it must cross mountains, rivers, and borders before the next moonrise or people will die. Hey guys, tonight we journey into a forgotten world where information itself was a weapon. A world where a single word whispered in the wrong court could collapse dynasties, and the man who carried that word well, let's just say you probably wouldn't survive in his shoes. Before we begin, if you find these stories relaxing or interesting, you can like, subscribe, share the video, or leave a comment to support the channel. Every bit of encouragement gives me the motivation to keep making videos every single day. Now, close your eyes if you like and imagine the air before dawn. Cold and filled with pine and fear. You crouch low beneath the branches of a cedar tree, breath clouding in the morning mist. The seal around your scroll is damp but unbroken. A pair of crows circle overhead, calling like omens. Somewhere in the distance, wolves are howling. You haven't eaten in a day, your horse is lame, and yet, your job hasn't even started. Because this is Persia, in the age before telegraphs or trust. You're a royal courier, one of the Shopper Khana system. Every few miles, there's a way station. In theory, if the messengers there haven't been robbed, or bribed, or killed. If the horse isn't sick. If the guards aren't drunk or asleep. If your face looks just harmless enough not to be stabbed first and questioned later. There's a clay medallion around your neck, stamped with the king's mark. But loyalty to the crown is a flexible thing out here in the provinces. Some villages have never even seen a satrap, let alone a king. You could say the wrong thing and be gutted like a goat. You could say nothing and still be blamed for a border skirmish. You could die for a word you don't understand. Your boots are blistered, your fingers numb. The scroll is wrapped in oilcloth, tied to your chest beneath your cloak. You've memorized the backup message anyway, in case you're caught and the scroll is destroyed. 12 syllables, one royal name, 2 dates, 1 location, but you don't know why. It's better not to. Your job is speed, not comprehension. You ride until your legs give out, until your horse collapses, until your lungs scream like bellows. The word must move. The word cannot sleep. You are its legs, not its mouth. Once, you passed a burned-out village. Smoke still curling from thatch. Charcoal stumps where homes once stood. The bodies had been removed, but the FLIs remain. That was a message gone late. Or maybe intercepted. Or maybe forged. No one tells you these things. You just remember not to fail like that. You swap mounts with another rider halfway through the journey. He looks like you, same cloak, same eyes full of mud and fire. You nod. You pass. You ride. No one speaks. Names are dangerous. You've heard the stories. Messengers flayed for leaking news, or poisoned by a bribe gone wrong, or simply vanished between provinces, swallowed by the mountains or the malice of men. Still, the system works. Mostly. Herodotus once wrote that neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from their swift completion of appointed rounds. The Greeks admired your kind, though they rarely knew what drove you, or what broke you. Tonight, you sleep beneath your horse, using its warmth to fight the cold. You dream of a house that no longer exists, a mother who asked you to stay, a meal you barely remember. You wake before the sun. Another day, another message, another road where death might be waiting. Some historians still debate whether ancient couriers were honored emissaries or expendable tools. The truth, like the word you carry, is sealed. But you keep writing, because that word has to live. The morning breaks with the harsh cry of a hawk overhead, its silhouette sharp against the pale blue sky. You don't know if it's a sign or simply a bird, but in your line of work, you've come to trust your instincts over omens, which is why you grip the reins tighter, knowing that every hour you waste could cost someone's life. The message you carry is more than just a royal order, it's an invisible boundary, a line of fate that's been drawn across empires, and you're the one expected to cross it. The road ahead stretches endlessly, an unbroken ribbon of dust and danger. The villages you pass are quiet to quiet. In some, the houses are crumbling, left behind by traders and farmers who've seen better days. But in others, there's a strange emptiness. a feeling like the inhabitants have just stepped out, or maybe never existed at all. As you ride deeper into the valley, the air changes. The smell of burning wood and smoke mixes with the sharp, musty scent of old stone. You pass ancient ruins, once proud fortresses, now little more than skeletons of their former selves. The stones are etched with the marks of long-forgotten kings, each mark telling a story of a battle won, a dynasty lost, or a message carried at a price. The past is never as far behind as you'd like it to be. Every step you take is a reminder that the weight of history is not just in what is remembered, but in what has been forgotten. You push your horse harder, the gallop steady but relentless. The day stretches long, and fatigue begins to claw at your limbs, but you dare not stop. Stopping is dangerous. In fact, stopping could cost you everything. The word you carry is too important to be delayed, and with it, the power to shift the course of history. You've seen it happen before, in the countless couriers that came before you, how a single word, a simple phrase, could ripple through time like a stone thrown into a pond. But unlike the couriers of old, you don't have the luxury of knowing how the story ends. As the sun begins to dip low in the sky, casting long shadows over the road, you approach a small village nestled between hills. Its walls are tall, dark, and covered in ivy, almost as though it's trying to hide from the world. You see no movement in the streets, but there's a flickering light from the windows, enough to make you pause. You know the risks. Village folk sometimes mistake travelers for spies, and at best, you'll be questioned. At worst, you'll be detained, and that would mean the message never reaches its destination. With a sigh, you dismount, steadying your hand on the hilt of your dagger, more out of habit than necessity. You approach the door to the inn, where a fire burns inside, casting a warm glow over the wooden floor. Before you knock, a shadow moves in the doorway. A figure steps into the light, a man dressed in a dark robe. His eyes are sharp and calculating, the kind of eyes that have seen too much, too quickly. "You're late," he says, his voice low and quiet. "And you're not the only one carrying something." You freeze, your heart suddenly racing. This is no ordinary innkeeper. This man knows more than he's letting on. But you can't afford to let him see the fear in your eyes. You force yourself to speak with the calm of someone who has carried this burden countless times. "I have nothing for you," you reply. "I carry only what is needed." He steps aside, allowing you to enter. The warmth inside is welcome, but it doesn't dull the tension in the air. The inn is empty save for a few flickering candles and the low hum of wind outside. You sit at the table, keeping your back to the wall, scanning the room. You feel a shift in the air, like something is just out of reach, something you can't quite put your finger on. The man sits across from you, studying you closely, as if measuring you with each breath. You can see it now, the faint glint of recognition in his eyes. He knows who you are. He knows why you're here. "You've been to the eastern border?" he asks suddenly, his tone more an accusation than a question. You nod cautiously. The road to the eastern frontier is not a place many couriers survive, and yet it's a place you've passed through many times. The smell of burning villages, the desperation in the air. The East is a land of shifting allegiances, where loyalties can change as quickly as the wind. But the man is still watching you, and you sense that he knows more about your journey than you care to admit. "I've seen the signs," he says softly, leaning forward. "The empire is falling apart, and the word you carry, it's more important than you think. The question is, are you willing to deliver it?" You blink. The air between you seems to thicken, heavy with something unsaid. There's a question hanging in the space between you two. A silent challenge that stretches far beyond the message you carry. You realize now that the journey has become more than just delivery. It's a test, one that will define not just the future of the empire, but your own survival. Suddenly, the door swings open, and you hear the clatter of hooves outside. You rise, instinctively, and the man rises with you. You exchange a glance. Something shifts in his expression, but it's too late to question it. The air is already thick with danger, and you know that whatever you choose now could change the course of history. The messenger arrives. He's another courier, but his eyes are wild with fear, and his hands tremble as he passes you a fresh scroll. He doesn't speak, just stumbles back, clutching his chest. There's blood on his tunic. "Get it to the capital," he gasps, before collapsing. You look at the scroll, then back at the man in the robe. You don't need to say anything. The message has changed. It's no longer just a letter, it's a warning. And now, it's up to you to decide whether you'll carry the word that could change everything or the one that could end it all. You step outside, the sun low in the sky now, casting long shadows over the uneven cobblestone streets. The air has grown cooler, but your skin still feels warm from the day's ride. You have no time to rest. The message has changed its form. What was once a simple royal command is now a puzzle, a warning, and a challenge all in one. The urgency in the messenger's voice rings in your ears as you push forward. Not sure where the path will take you next, but knowing it cannot lead you backward. As you ride, you glance at the scroll in your hands, the wax seal still intact. Your mind races. Who else knew about this? Why send you instead of the hundreds of other messengers who could carry the same burden? Was this just a coincidence? Or was there something more to this? A part of you fears that with every mile you travel, you're walking into a trap. The air grows colder as you approach the edge of town. You know that beyond the walls lies a world of danger, one where trust is a luxury few can afford. But there's something else, something heavier than the threat of enemies or the exhaustion clawing at your body. You can feel it in your chest, a tightness that refuses to leave, like an old secret that's finally come home to roost. The gate at the edge of the town is open, but you hesitate before crossing it. You glance back, just for a moment, before forcing your horse forward. You won't turn back. Not now. The road ahead leads to the capital, to answers, and you know that you'll reach it, or die trying. But as the town disappears behind you, you wonder what you're really carrying. The scroll is still sealed, but now, it feels more like a curse than a command. You're not just a messenger anymore. You're a pawn in a game that you didn't know you were playing, and the stakes are rising with every mile. The path through the hills is treacherous, and the wind whips at your face. There are rumors about these hills, about travelers who vanished into them, their bodies never found. Some say it's bandits, others that it's the spirits of the land, angry at those who tread on sacred ground. But you've heard the stories before, and like every messenger before you, you've learned to dismiss them. You've got a job to do. You try to focus on the ride, but your thoughts keep drifting back to the scroll. What if it's not just a message? What if it's something more, a key to a secret that could unravel the empire itself? You don't know the answer, and you don't have time to find out. The path grows steeper, the terrain more dangerous. Your horse stumbles, but you quickly steady it, urging it forward. You glance at the scroll again, your grip tightening around the wax seal. You've carried messages before, urgent ones, dangerous ones. But this feels different. There's something heavier in the air, like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. You can't help but wonder if you're carrying a message to save an empire or to destroy it. Suddenly, the sound of hooves behind you breaks your concentration. You glance over your shoulder, but the dust kicks up, obscuring your vision. You push your horse harder, but the sound grows louder. Someone is following you. You reach for the dagger at your side, a reflex born of years of training, but there's no time. The follower is too close now. You feel a chill run down your spine as the realization hits. This is no ordinary traveler. This is someone with intent, someone who knows exactly where you're going. You kick your horse into a gallop, heart pounding in your chest. But the rider behind you doesn't slow down. They match your speed, keeping just a few paces behind, and you know they're waiting for you to make a mistake. You push harder, urging your horse up the hill, but the terrain is rough, and you're starting to lose ground. You know you won't be able to outrun them for long, and you can't afford to stop, not with the scroll still in your hands. A voice calls out from behind, sharp and commanding. Stop. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here for the scroll. You don't stop. You can't. You've learned that trust is a commodity best spent elsewhere, and you know that the moment you hand over the scroll, you lose. Whoever is behind you doesn't want just a message, they want the power it holds. But the chase is nearing its end. The path ahead is narrow, and there's nowhere to go but up. You dig your heels into the horse's sides, urging it toward the top of the hill, praying for one last burst of speed. As you crest the hill, you spot a faint silhouette in the distance. It's a figure, standing on the far edge of the road, holding something in their hands, something shiny. You squint, trying to make out the details, but the wind picks up, and the figure seems to fade into the shadows. You turn back, only to find the follower much closer now, nearly within reach. The wind howls in your ears as you draw your dagger, preparing for whatever comes next. But just as the figure behind you raises their hand to strike, a sudden shout rings out someone else, someone from the far edge of the road, calling your name. A voice you recognize. Stop. The command is louder this time, and it's enough to freeze both you and the rider in place. You glance over your shoulder again, only to find another messenger, this one carrying an identical scroll, sealed with the same wax. Who are you? You ask, the confusion in your voice more apparent now. The new rider pulls up beside you, their face stern but weary. I've been sent to help. We've been following your trail. The Empire needs you, but not alone. The chase had been a test. The scroll, a dangerous puzzle. And now, you understand this wasn't just a message. This was a game of life and death, with the future of an empire hanging in the balance. The sun sinks lower as you ride alongside the second courier, who says little, but his presence is oddly comforting. You had not realized how lonely the road had become until you felt the weight on your shoulders, lighter now that someone else is carrying part of it. He holds the second scroll, tightly clutched, his face grim. You wonder whether this messenger knows the full meaning of the word he carries, or if he, too, is simply following orders, like you. But questions aren't meant to be asked on this road. Not yet. You glance over at him, noting the faint tremor in his hands as he grips the reins. His tunic is dusty, his boots worn, but he rides with a strange ease. He is used to this life, used to the silence and the weight of something important. Or maybe, he's simply resigned to it. You've done this before, haven't you? You ask, trying to break the silence. His eyes flick to you for a brief moment, then back to the road ahead. Once, he says quietly, but it didn't end well. You don't press him for details. Some things are better left unsaid, especially when you're walking the thin line between duty and survival. His response is enough. He's been where you are. He knows the pressure that comes with being a messenger, knows that every word you carry could be the difference between life and death, between war and peace. The road you travel now is unfamiliar, less traveled, winding through barren land with little cover. The chill of night creeps into your bones. You pull your cloak tighter around you, feeling the weight of the message between you and the world. The stars begin to prick through the darkness above, distant and cold. Eventually, the silence grows uncomfortable, and you break it again. How did you survive? You ask, your voice more a whisper than a question. He shifts in his saddle, but doesn't answer immediately. His hand moves to the scroll again, touching it as if seeking comfort in the wax seal. Some messengers don't, he replies, his voice low, like it carries a weight heavier than the words themselves. There are those who don't make it to the destination. Others disappear along the way, and there are those who wish the message had never been delivered at all. His words settle into your chest like stones. You knew the risk, of course. You'd always known that delivering a message could cost you your life, but hearing it from someone else, hearing the finality in his voice, makes it real in a way that stings. You wonder, briefly, if you've already crossed that point of no return. The cold begins to bite harder, and the silence grows thick. Your horse's hooves scrape against the path, but you can hardly hear it over the pounding of your own heart. What would you do if the messenger were to fall, or if you, too, were to succumb to the dangers of the road? What then? Would the Empire still be saved? Or would the message fall into the wrong hands? The thought gnaws at you. If you fail, it's not just your life at stake. It's the entire course of history, and you know that, deep down, you're not prepared for what happens if you don't make it. A distant sound brings you back to the present. The low rumble of hooves from behind. You glance over your shoulder, and your heart leaps into your throat. There's movement, shadowy figures silhouetted against the rising moon. Riders. They are coming fast. Too fast. Your mind races. You think of the scroll tucked against your chest. The horses are gaining ground, and you don't know if they're here to help or to finish what the first rider started. You urge your horse faster, but the dust rises thick around you, and the moonlight is weak against the growing darkness. Ride. You shout to your companion, your pulse quickening, but there's no time for him to answer. Before you can react, a figure appears, breaking the line of riders. A man, cloaked in black, face hidden beneath a hood. His hands move quickly, drawing a dagger from his belt. He leaps onto your path, blocking the way. "Stop," he commands, his voice deep and unnerving. That scroll isn't yours to carry. You reach instinctively for your dagger, but the figure is too close. The air is thick with tension, and the world seems to freeze as you face the man who would stop you. There is no time to argue. He's already made his choice. "Who sent you?" you demand, your voice shaking but determined. Your eyes flick to the scroll, your mind racing for a way out of this. The man doesn't answer. He only takes a step forward, eyes glinting with a dangerous calm. "Hand over the scroll," he repeats, "or you'll never reach your destination." Your heart pounds in your chest, and you glance back at the other messenger. He's already drawing his blade, ready to defend. But you know he won't make it in time. You feel a deep, unsettling sense of dread. This is the moment of decision. The man raises his dagger, ready to strike. But as he lunges, you leap to the side, narrowly avoiding the blow. The scroll is still clutched tightly in your hand, but the world is spinning. Your horse kicks and panics, the sound of hooves echoing in your ears as you twist around to face the attacker once more. Another figure appears behind him, and your heart drops. There are more. Historians still debate whether couriers faced the same threats from bandits as they did from the powers they served. Were they protectors of empires, or pawns in a dangerous game where any moment could turn into a struggle for survival? You don't have the luxury of debate. You fight. You run. The mission is clear. Get the message to the capital at all costs. The future of your people depends on it, and you can feel the weight of it in every breath you take. With one final glance at the pursuers, you dig your heels into your horse and ride into the night, the dark figures now far behind. But you know this chase is far from over. The night air stings your skin as you ride faster, the thud of hooves pounding against the ground in perfect rhythm with your heartbeat. The message still rests tightly against your chest, tucked under layers of cloth, sealed with the weight of not just your mission, but the lives of countless people who depend on it. The wind rushes past your ears, but all you can hear is the pounding in your chest, as if your body itself understands the urgency more clearly than your mind. Each hoofbeat is a reminder that time is not on your side. Behind you, the shadows of the pursuers fade into the darkness, but you know better than to feel relief. They are relentless, trained for this, swift and efficient. You've encountered their kind before, messengers sent by others with their own agenda, and you know they won't give up easily. They might not stop until they get the scroll, or until you stop. Your horse is starting to falter. It's been days since either of you has had a proper rest, and the path you ride is rough, winding through thick forests and rocky terrain. But you push forward, trying to keep your focus on the road ahead. It's not the fear of the pursuers that drives you now, it's the message, still locked away, the only link between empires, between peace and war. You round a sharp bend, and for the first time since the chase began, you allow yourself a glance behind. The figures are gone. You breathe a little easier, but only for a moment. You know this isn't the end. If they can't catch you here, they'll catch you somewhere else. The message is too important. The thought crosses your mind again. Why you? Why did they choose you for this task? There are faster riders, more skilled couriers, priests with more experience, but you were the one who received the call, who answered without hesitation. The weight of this choice presses on your chest again, as if the message itself is somehow becoming heavier, more urgent. You push your horse onward, trying to focus. There's still some daylight left, and you need to get as far as possible before the cover of night fully embraces you. The trees start to thin out, and soon the road leads you into a sparse clearing. In the distance, you see the flicker of a campfire. There's movement around it, the silhouettes of figures sitting or standing. Your stomach tightens. You recognize the shape of a campfire guard, and the chill in your spine tells you there's something off about it. This is the moment. This is where the road splits. You've been trained to recognize the signs. You know what's coming, even before the voices carry through the air. Something shifts in the underbrush, a faint sound of footsteps on dry leaves. You look to your right and spot a shadow, just a flicker, but it's enough to tell you that you're not alone. They've caught up to you. A man steps out of the shadows, his dark cloak billowing behind him like a storm cloud. His face is barely visible beneath the hood, but his stance is unmistakable, confident, calculating, and entirely too familiar. You don't need to see his eyes to know that he's been watching you. The same one from earlier, the one who tried to take the scroll. You should have handed it over, he says, his voice smooth but laced with cold intent. It's too late now. You're not going to make it to the capital. You don't hesitate. You pull your dagger from your belt. Heart pounding, but your grip is steady. You know what you have to do. You'll have to kill me first, you say, and the words come out sharper than you feel. The man laughs, low and cruel, but there's something else in his voice, an acknowledgement of respect. Maybe. I didn't want to do this. I was hoping you'd see reason. You know what he's offering. An out. An easy way to stop the chase. Hand over the scroll, and he'll let you go. But you've come too far. This isn't about survival anymore. This is about something bigger, something that could alter the course of history. You raise your dagger, and the man's smile fades. He steps closer, calculating, but the space between you is closing. In that split second, you make a decision. You dart to the side, grabbing a rock from the ground and throwing it at the guard's feet. It's enough to distract him for the briefest moment, but it's enough. You move faster than you think possible, slipping past him and making a dash for the campfire. You feel his hand brush your shoulder as you slip out of his reach. You don't stop running. Your heart slams in your chest, your legs burning from exhaustion. The scroll is still there, tucked securely beneath your cloak. Your horse is waiting for you just beyond the clearing, ready to carry you into the next phase of the journey. The man doesn't call after you. He doesn't need to. He knows you've made your choice, and now, you must face the consequences. Historians still debate whether ancient messengers were fully aware of the risks they took with each delivery, or whether they were simply pawns in a game they didn't fully understand. Some argue that messengers knew the true weight of their task, the life or death nature of their words, while others believe they were only following orders, unaware of the consequences their actions might have on a global scale. But in this moment, as you race toward the next village, one thing is clear. You're no longer just delivering a message. You become part of the story, and you can't stop running now. You arrive at the edge of a rocky outcrop just as the first pale blush of dawn stains the eastern sky. Your horse, coated in a thin sheen of sweat, exhales steam from flared nostrils, eyes wide with fatigue. You dismount quietly, crouching beside a bush, scanning the horizon below. The land stretches out like parchment-folded hills, skeletal trees, and the glint of a faraway village still sleeping under mist. You listen. Only birds. No who's behind you. Not yet. You allow yourself one slow breath, and then another. The scroll at your chest remains sealed, but its presence feels louder than ever. Your master told you it must reach the border before sundown. That's all. No elaboration. No signature. Just a wax seal with the symbol you didn't recognize, a crowned flame. You tried not to stare at it. Tried not to think about the rumors you'd overheard in the palace corridors. Something about a revolt. A broken alliance. A woman missing. No names. Just consequence. You rise and begin to walk your horse down the narrow deer path that cuts through the ravine below. The rocks slip beneath your boots, and your mount follows reluctantly. The terrain is unkind dry, crumbling underfoot, and the path grows more treacherous with every switchback. You've heard stories of couriers who vanished in places like this. Not from pursuers, but from the land itself. A wrong step. A sudden landslide. One messenger was said to have survived only by eating the leather bindings of his own satchel before he was found days later, hallucinating and quoting poetry to ants. It's in these stretches, these dead zones between villages, where your thoughts wander dangerously. You wonder what would happen if you stopped. Just sat down beneath one of these twisted trees and let the scroll lie where it may. Would the world change? Would anyone truly notice? You quickly shake the idea away. That's the kind of thought that gets messengers killed. Up ahead, a wooden bridge creaks gently in the wind. It's no wider than a cart's axle and looks abandoned for decades. You approach slowly, placing your weight on each board with the caution of someone defusing a trap. Your horse balks, snorting and tossing its head. I know, you whisper. I hate it too. But the only other option is to descend into the ravine, and you've seen what lives down there. You make it across, but just barely. 2 boards crack beneath your boot. The second time, you lunge forward, heart slamming against your ribs. You roll once in the dust, then freeze. But no sound follows, just the echo of your own panic. Another breath. You gather yourself. A memory comes back to you, a training drill. Your instructor, old and grizzled, had lined up 10 apprentices and told you that if even one word in your message was altered, mispronounced, or delayed, you might as well have sent no message at all. Words can save cities, he'd barked, but they can also burn them down. We are the line between had sounded dramatic then, but now, on this path, with the scroll pressed to your ribs and hunger gnawing at your belly, it doesn't sound like enough. Historical records describe how Achaemenid couriers were stationed at intervals stretching across thousands of kilometers. The Persian Royal Road, a marvel of ancient infrastructure, allowed messages to travel with shocking speed. What took merchants weeks could take you, if you did not sleep, only days. And yet, even with the system, the roads were haunted by uncertainty. Wolves, rebels, mountains, floods. Sometimes even the road itself would vanish beneath you. You stop at a stream and kneel to drink. The water is cold, coppery, but your throat is sandpaper. You cup your hands and drink greedily, then splash your face, trying to wash away the road's fatigue. Your reflection stares back, mud-smeared, hollow-eyed, but alive. That will have to be enough. You chew a strip of dried fig, savoring its sweetness like a luxury. There's a dark leaf wrapped around a stone nearby, as if someone had been here before. Recently, the idea unsettles you. Were they friendly, or was this a marker, a warning? The thought lingers. There's a strange rhythm to the life of a messenger. It isn't just about running or riding. It's about observing, calculating. You start to notice the tilt of a bird's flight, the sudden silence of a forest, the way a shadow moves that it shouldn't. That's how you stay alive. It's also how you go mad. One courier in the Old Empire was said to have delivered letters flawlessly for 20 years, and then vanished for 5. When he returned, he claimed he had been speaking only in proverbs, unwilling to speak plainly ever again. No one ever found out why. The king pardoned him anyway. Some said he had seen something along the way. You climb the final ridge just as the sun crests the horizon. The village is in view now, tiny as a thumbnail and distant enough to feel like another kingdom. But it's your destination. You pause at the top, lungs heaving. The wind carries a smell you don't like, charred wood. You can't see smoke, but the scent clings to the air like memory. Historians still debate whether the risks couriers took were outweighed by the influence they held. Were messengers mere pawns, tools to be discarded when convenient? Or were they, as some inscriptions suggest, considered divine instruments, chosen to carry fate across kingdoms? The answer may lie in how few of them ever wrote memoirs. You begin your descent, your legs sore, but your resolve sharpening. The scroll presses into your ribs like a second heartbeat. You adjust your cloak and carry on. There are still hours to go, and messages don't deliver themselves. You reach the outskirts of the village just after noon, when the sun hangs high and merciless in the pale blue sky. Your lips are cracked, your tongue is thick, and you haven't spoken a word in hours. But even as you approach the crooked gate, barely more than 2 upright branches lashed together with twine, you hesitate. Something is off. The fields are too quiet. The goats tethered in the distance bleat without answer. You see no children, no smoke rising from chimneys, no traders shouting offers down a dusty lane. You dismount, grounding your boots in the gravel path. The wind stirs a single strip of fabric tied to a pole near the entrance. It's crimson, torn, a warning, you realize. Disease? Bandits? You can't turn back now, though. The scroll tucked inside your cloak weighs more than your own bones. If it's not delivered, everything else you've suffered, every ache, every moment of terror will have been for nothing. You press forward, every step deliberate. The first home you pass has its door ajar, swinging slightly. The room inside is dim, but you glimpse overturned furniture, spilled grain, and a child's doll lying face down in the dust. No footprints, no voices, just an oppressive stillness. A dozen more steps and the stench hits you. It clings to the nostrils, sour, rancid, with a coppery sweetness beneath. You cover your mouth with the edge of your sleeve, but it barely helps. As you round a corner, your foot brushes something soft. A goat, dead in the road. Eyes glassy, ribs jutting from torn skin. Flies bloom from the wound like petals. You retreat a pace, chest tightening, fighting the urge to retch. Then footsteps. Soft, deliberate, and unmistakable. You freeze. From behind a clay water cistern, an old man emerges, barefoot and gaunt, his hair long and gray and clinging to his temples like wet rope. He raises a hand, not in greeting, more like a test. You do not speak. Neither does he. A few more figures step out from nearby corners. A woman cradling a cloth bundle. A boy holding a kitchen knife too large for his wrist. You realize with a jolt they thought you might be a thief. You raise your arms, slowly, showing your empty hands. You don't even try to speak. The scroll remains hidden beneath your cloak. You gesture toward the road, then toward the mountains behind you. You mouth a single word. Messenger. One of the villagers nods. Tension cracks, but only slightly. The old man gestures for you to follow. He leads you behind the main cluster of homes, to what was once a storage hut, but now appears to be a makeshift infirmary. Inside, two mats lie on the floor. One is empty. The other holds a girl no older than 13, covered in damp cloths. She is pale, except for her cheeks, which burn with unnatural red. Sweat clings to her forehead. Her breath rattles in her chest. You look away. The old man kneels beside her and dips a cloth in a pot of cool water. He speaks a single word in a dialect you barely understand. Fever. You nod. And then, with the gentleness of someone revealing sacred treasure, you remove the scroll. The man accepts it with trembling fingers, hands it to a woman nearby. She breaks the seal, reads silently. Then again, aloud. You hear names, probably local healers. Instructions. A list of herbs. A warning not to travel, but to wait for a horse-mounted apothecary who will follow within 2 days. You exhale. They were expecting you. You're not the only link in this chain, but you are the most fragile one. You watch as the girl moans in her sleep, thrashing slightly. The woman tucks her in tighter. The boy with the knife stands in the doorway, no longer holding it as a threat, but as a ritual, a gesture of duty. In the corner of the hut lies a small wooden box marked with black ink. You recognize the symbol, an ancient script for wind. It's an old courier tool, used to store the names of those who died en route. There are already 6 slats inside. You wonder if the villagers added them all themselves. Historical records from Elamite and later Persian civilizations show the use of encoded scrolls, double-layered texts that required specific heat to reveal. Some were written in invisible ink, or coated with oils that triggered changes under sunlight. Your scroll wasn't that clever, but it didn't need to be. Sometimes, survival isn't about secrets. It's about reaching the right person in time. The villagers invite you to rest. You decline the food they have so little, and you cannot stomach the idea of taking more. But you accept a clay cup of water. It tastes like moss and metal. You drink anyway. The old man places his hand over yours. Thank you, he whispers in a language you almost understand. Then he nods toward a shaded alcove, where a traveler's mat has been unfurled. You sleep, but not deeply. Your dreams are a murky blur of who's and torn letters. You wake twice to the girl's coffin. Each time, the woman changes her cloths. Each time, the old man hums a tune you've never heard before. There's something hauntingly beautiful about the way people survive with almost nothing. You've passed through cities that gleam with gold and reek of cruelty. But here, in this forgotten village, you see compassion woven into every act, desperate, imperfect, but undeniably human. Historians still debate whether messengers like you were merely tools of state control, gears in an empire's grand machine, or if they functioned as lifelines, connecting remote souls to decisions made in distant courts. Perhaps it doesn't matter. To the girl in the mat, the scroll was everything. As the sun begins to set, you ready your horse again. The boy hands you a sliver of dried fig wrapped in cloth. You take it without words. The woman bows her head. You nod in return, and then, quietly, without ceremony, you ride out. You don't look back, but you carry her breath in your memory. You're traveling deeper now, past what maps call the edge of civilization, into places where the land itself seems to forget its name. The road fades into dry earth, the sun scorches with a quiet, unrelenting cruelty, and even the birds seem to give up calling by midday. Your clothes stick to your skin, your knees ache, your left boot is beginning to split near the toe, and with every step, fine dust creeps inside to settle like tiny coals between your toes. You try not to think about it. You focus on the next marker, a stack of stones on the ridge, arranged in threes. When you reach it, you drink sparingly. The next well is still 2 days away. This stretch of land, once a throne of trade and tribute, is now mostly forgotten. A few centuries ago, it belonged to the heart of Elamite territory, where kings and priestesses dictated their dreams to scribes, and clay tablets carried messages that would take weeks to cross the kingdom. You think of them often, those older couriers who had no horses, only feet and sandals, and a prayer that the next storm wouldn't rise too quickly. One of the oldest recovered tablets, cracked and sun-bleached, bore only for symbols: a name, a location, a direction. One scholar speculated it was a death warrant. Another claimed it was a love note. You hope it was the second. By evening, you find the remnants of an outpost, low walls barely knee-high, half swallowed by sand and scrub. You tether your horse to a thorny acacia and inspect the ruins. The walls are built from fired brick, too regular to be natural. There's a hollow sound when you tap them. Somewhere underneath, perhaps, storage chambers still lie undisturbed. But you won't be the one to dig them up. You're not here for relics. You find a spot near what might have been the corner of a watchpost and unfurl your mat. The silence around you is immense. No insects, no breeze, just the tick of heat cooling off the rocks. You retrieve the scroll from your satchel, unroll it, and hold it to the fading light, not to read it again. You've memorized every line, but to check for damage. The wax seal remains unbroken. The edges are curling slightly, and the ink has begun to fade in places, but the words are still legible. One phrase stands out, just 3 lines from the top. Tell him before the next moon. It's not your place to wonder what it means. And yet you do. Your mentor once told you never to read messages meant for others. The moment you read them, she said, they start belonging to you. She was right. But how can you not think about it when every letter you carry seems heavier than the last? One enver spoke of a messenger in the court of Cyrus the Great who refused to eat until his delivery was made, fearing the message would die if he indulged himself. You always thought that sounded theatrical until now, lying on cold stone with nothing but your own heartbeat to keep you company. You drift into a shallow sleep and wake to the sound of footsteps. At first, you think it's a dream, your mind playing tricks in the half-light. But then you hear the crunch of gravel again, slower this time. Someone is moving nearby. You reach for your dagger, not to attack, but to show you're awake, aware, prepared. A figure emerges from the shadows, cloaked and hooded. You speak first. Who are you? Silence. Then, a rasp. Wind carrier. You nod. He steps closer, his face still obscured. I was told to meet you. You've never liked exchanges in the dark. Messages are meant for recipients, not middlemen. You stand slowly, hand still near your weapon. What's your name? He doesn't give one. Instead, he raises a coin, circular, bronze, etched with a broken line and 2 dots. It's the same token mentioned in your brief, a symbol of allegiance. You lower your blade. He nods, then points to the scroll. Hand it over. He waits in the canyon. You hesitate. It's not protocol, but the message is urgent, and he has the token. Still, your instincts clench. I'll ride there myself, you say. He pauses. You feel the tension in the air tighten like thread around your throat. But then, surprisingly, he nods again, wise, and vanishes into the darkness. You stay awake the rest of the night. By sunrise, you ride out toward the canyon, mind racing with questions. Who was that man? A true contact? Or someone testing your loyalty? There are stories, quiet ones, about rogue agents intercepting royal scrolls, twisting their content, delivering altered messages that change the course of alliances. One tale tells of a courier whose message was intercepted and rewritten to provoke a war between mountain clans. Thousands died, And the courier? His tongue was nailed to a tree as punishment. Speak only what is yours, the inscription said. Scholars still debate whether that tale is truth or parable, but every messenger you've ever known believes it happened, just like you believe a message can kill, even if all it says is a single name. The canyon narrows, then opens into a clearing. A man stands at the far side, tall, broad-shouldered, armor-worn, but gleaming in places. His horse waits beside him, motionless. You slow your approach and dismount. You remove the scroll and extend it without speaking. He breaks the seal, scans the content, and then, finally, meets your eyes. Did anyone touch this? You shake your head. Only me. He nods once and gestures toward a saddlebag. From it, he pulls a leather pouch and tosses it to you. The weight inside jingles softly. Payment. You don't count it. Thank you, he says, simply. Then, more quietly, you've done more than you know. You mount your horse again. He doesn't ask your name. You don't ask his. That's how it works. But as you ride away, the canyon echoing behind you, you hear him whisper something to his horse, something soft and reverent. You catch only 2 words. Still loyal. You smile. Just a little. Because for once, that's true. The road turns to dust again, the scent of mint fields long gone. And now, you ride through a brittle basin where wind slashes across your cheeks and seems to tear meaning from your lips. Your destination this time is a fortress on the edge of the Zagros Mountains, where tribal alliances are as fragile as the pottery carried on donkey backs. You're carrying one word, just one, from a satrap's court. The word is delay. That's it. That's all. But it could be enough to stall a battle, prevent a siege, or, if misinterpreted, cause a rebellion to fester like an untreated wound. You cradle the wax tablet against your chest like a sacred relic, even though you've memorized the word over and over. You whisper it to yourself like a prayer, like a curse, like a chant. Delay, delay, delay. The tablet may be broken, lost, or snatched, but the word must survive in your mouth, in your memory, in your tone. There is no margin for error, not in a language like Old Persian, where emphasis and inflection can change a command into an insult. The fortress gates loom, but they're closed. The guards don't recognize you. Your clothes are dusted in road filth, your badge of office obscured by sunburn and sweat. They demand you shout your purpose from a distance, but you dare not. This word, uttered in haste, could mean withdrawal instead of postponement. Delay could be heard as retreat or cowardice, so you beg to be brought to the scribe, to speak behind closed doors. They hesitate. One lowers his spear, another curses you. Inside the fortress, the commander waits in his war tent surrounded by maps inked in charcoal and dyed wool, and you can see the pressure etched in his temples. One wrong word, one wrong breath, and 100 riders may launch into enemy territory too soon. Or worse, not at all. When you finally speak, you repeat the word 3 times, carefully, deliberately, like a priest intoning a holy name. The scribe nods. The commander exhales. You watch the tension collapse from his posture like water draining from a basin. Some messengers do not speak aloud at all. In the western provinces, it's said that the royal whisperers carried no parchment, no tablets, not even visible symbols. Instead, they wore coated jewelry, rings with carvings, earrings shaped like birds, and merely pointed to specific pieces depending on the message. One touch to the left earring meant march. A twist of the signet ring meant stand down. To an outsider, it looked like nervous fidgeting. To the informed, it could launch a war. There's a debate among scholars about whether such non-verbal codes were actually reliable or just romantic fabrications of later scribes trying to elevate the mundane into legend. After all, rings can slip, gestures can falter, and even a confident messenger can sweat in front of a sword-wielding general. Still, the stories persist, and the methods, verbal, written, and symbolic, continue to be taught to new riders, as if repetition alone could guard against confusion. But confusion comes anyway. One winter, you arrive at a town where the leader has already received a contradictory message, same seal, different meaning. They accuse you of treason. You're locked in a grain cellar while the town elders argue over your fate. It's not until the snow melts and a second rider appears with clarification that you're released, pale and stiff-legged. Even then, they ask if you'd like to return home. You shake your head. You don't dare. If the satrap believes you've failed your task, there's no forgiveness waiting, just silence. You ride again the next day. Another message, another border, another test. And that night, as you lay by your saddle with the blade tucked beneath your shirt, you murmur the next word. You've been given, wait. You say it out loud, in 5 different tones, because you know that in the morning, it may be the only word between life and revolt. You wake early, even before the desert light turns the sky from black to bruised violet. Sleep clings to your eyelids like cobwebs, but your instincts prod you up long before your mind wants to follow. Something about that last exchange, the man in the canyon and his quiet farewell, has stayed with you longer than it should. You stretch your legs, roll your shoulders, and check your pack for the 100th time. The scroll is gone. The pouch of payment still rests against your hip. But what weighs heaviest isn't the silver. It's the way he said those words. Still loyal, like he meant them as a question more than a statement. You ride out along a path so narrow it barely accommodates your horse's stride. Below to your left, the earth dips sharply into a gorge, and to your right, rocks rise like ancient teeth gnawed flat by time. You keep one hand loosely on the reins, the other near the hilt of your blade, not because you expect an ambush, but because expectation is irrelevant when it comes to survival. You've learned to ride like a ghost, quiet and unassuming, not attracting attention unless it's useful. And this morning, silence is your only companion. By midday, the landscape shifts. Cracked soil gives way to gravel, gravel to sand, and eventually, you see signs of settlement again: low stone fences, grazing goats, the faint glint of a polished pot resting atop a rooftop ledge. You skirt the village, careful not to draw the eyes of shepherds or children. Messengers are not always welcome. In some regions, they are seen as agents of misfortune, carriers of war summons, tax notices, execution orders. In others, they're mistaken for spies, especially when their tongue doesn't match the dialect of the fields they walk through. You've once been chased out of a village, not for your message, but for your silence. He must be cursed, a woman shrieked as she threw a clay bowl at your head. Even his voice is secret. Later, when you shared that story with your mentor, she only laughed. Better a broken bowl than a broken oath, she said. But she added one thing, a line you now recall more clearly than ever. Just remember, people fear what arrives too quietly. Even whispers can be weapons. You pass a tree scarred with dozens of knife carvings, some initials, some animal shapes, one etched outline of a hand missing 2 fingers. It's a landmark, crude and crude looking, but known. Travelers call it the Whisperer's Tree. Supposedly, it was where clandestine letters were once nailed beneath the bark for rebels to retrieve by moonlight. That may be myth. Still, you feel the need to salute it as you pass, 2 fingers brushing your chest. A gesture older than memory. You're not even sure why you do it anymore. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of superstition, or maybe you just want to believe that every piece of this strange work has roots, even if no one can see them. A few miles on, you finally meet your next contact. A girl no older than 10, dressed in traveling garb, and wearing sandals worn almost flat. She waits at the fork in the road, legs crossed, face unreadable. When you stop, she raises a finger to her lips. Quiet. No names. She reaches into her belt pouch and hands you a small bundle, wrapped in lambskin and tied with a thread of black wool. You recognize the wrapping standard for covert exchanges. You nod once, and she nods back. Then she walks away, vanishing into a patch of tall grass without ever looking over her shoulder. You don't open the package right away. You wait until you find cover under a ridge of stone, the sky now painted gold and amber. You unwrap the bundle. Inside is a piece of parchment, precisely folded. No symbols, no ink until you angle it toward the light and catch the shimmer of wax-resistant script. You read the message twice, then a third time. It's brief, urgent. One word makes your pulse slow. Evacuate. No location, no elaboration, just a town's name, the word evacuate, and a deadline. 1 day. That's all. You've never questioned the logic of your orders until now. Evacuate? Why? You think of the small farms, the narrow paths, the well near the market that draws half the town each morning. You try to imagine them empty, silent, echoing with only wind. You can't. It doesn't feel right. But your job isn't to feel, it's to deliver, always. Still, the message burns your fingers like it knows something you don't. There's a scholarly rumor passed in quiet corners and footnotes that messages like these were often sent in advance of political purges, that those allowed to flee weren't the innocent, but the influential. Historians still debate whether certain messenger systems in the Persian Empire operated under a code of selective omission, where only loyalist settlements received warnings, and dissidents were left to burn. There's no evidence, only gaps in the archive. But gaps can speak too. When you've studied enough silence, you make your way toward the town. As the sky darkens, you think about the cost of a single word. Evacuate. If it's a warning, you might save lives. If it's a trap, you might sentence them to exile or worse, suspicion. Every message is a risk. Every scroll a loaded dice. But still you go. Still you ride. At the town's edge, a guard stops you with a hand raised. He's young, nervous. He eyes your satchel. What do you carry? You don't answer. Instead, you produce the copper sigil hidden in your belt loop, stamped with the insignia of the royal courier seal. He blinks, nods, opens the gate. You step into a town that smells of dry bread and boiled wool. Children run through the dust, kicking old sandals like balls. A merchant calls out an offer for dried dates, his voice cheerful despite the failing light. You know what you must do. You find the chief official, a balding man with 2 silver rings on each finger, and press the parchment into his hand. His face shifts as he reads. Not fear, not surprise. Something more complicated, perhaps guilt. He offers you food, a place to stay, even coin. You decline all 3. You leave the town before sunrise. You never learn what happened after you left. But days later, you hear whispers at a way station. The town is gone. Not burned, not flooded, emptied. No explanation. The people left, and no one saw where they went. You dream about it that night. Dust rising from abandoned footprints. A child's sandal forgotten in a doorway. And the word, echoing still, evacuate. Your boots crunch over gravel as you reach the coast. The scent of brine cuts through your thoughts, sharp as vinegar, bringing a fleeting memory of when this job still felt romantic. Once, years ago, you imagined messengers as noble agents of peace and war-swift riders whispering secrets to kings. But now, standing before a dock that creaks like brittle bone and sways under the weight of salt-stiffened ropes, you know better. There is no poetry here, just the burden of a message still hidden in your belt. An ache of travel you've stopped noticing. You've arrived early, as instructed, before the tide swells. The ship you're to meet has not yet docked, though you see its black sail in the distance. A gull circles above, shrieking once before diving toward some unseen prey. You wish you had its clarity of purpose. The port is small too small for questions. Fishermen keep their eyes low, their mouths tight. The dockhand who greets you doesn't ask your name, only eyes the leather seal on your satchel. He motions toward a waiting crate, then disappears, leaving you alone with the smell of drying fish and wet rope. You've been given no clue as to the contents of this message, only its title, Pact Renewal. That could mean anything. A treaty, a threat, a reassignment of trade routes. In truth, it could be blank parchment and still matter, because presence alone is message enough. Historians still debate whether some messengers in the Median and Achaemenid periods delivered sealed but empty scrolls simply to signal movement, to create the illusion of diplomacy, or to bait responses. Some scholars consider it psychological warfare, weaponized parchment. Others see it as bureaucratic theater. You no longer care what's inside, only that it gets where it must. The ship moors, and a man steps off. He's dressed like a sailor, but carries himself like a noble. Straight-backed, clean-shaven, eyes sharp enough to part silk. He doesn't smile. He doesn't speak. He holds out a hand, and you place the message there. No confirmation, no countersign, just contact. He nods once, then turns to board again. That's it. You sit on a splintered crate, unsure whether to feel relieved or used. This is your life now, making moments that vanish. Your presence must be invisible. Your voice, unnecessary. Your touch, brief. You wonder if a message ever wonders about the hand that carried it. You spend the night in a coastal inn where the walls breathe damp and the bed is harder than the floor. You don't sleep. You rarely do these days. The mind wanders in the dark, and yours drifts toward that sailor's eyes, not cruel, not kind, just efficient, like yours have become. In the morning, the innkeeper brings you stale bread and lukewarm tea with a smile too wide to trust. She comments on the storm clouds out at sea and asks if you're a merchant. You nod. It's easier than explaining anything else. She offers you dates with honey on the house, and you accept not because you're hungry, but because the gesture feels like a relic from a gentler life. The road inland is rough, washed out in places by seasonal floods, overrun with thorny shrubs that claw at your leggings like children begging to be noticed. You travel alone again. You used to have a horse, but it died 2 weeks ago in a sandstorm, and you've grown accustomed to your own footsteps. They speak plainly to you. One step, then the next. Midway through the journey, you reach a grove where shade hangs heavy like damp cloth. You sit beneath a tree, legs crossed, back straight, posture automatic. A boy approaches you, maybe 12, face sun-darkened and expressionless. He doesn't speak. He hands you a rolled cloth and leaves. Inside is your next instruction, stitched in thread rather than written in ink, an old method designed for easy destruction. You unravel it carefully. The message is brief. One name, a town, a date, no more. You memorize it, then burn the cloth, watching the smoke carry your purpose upward into the branches. You remember a story your mentor told you long ago about a messenger who carried so many secrets, he eventually forgot his own name. They say he died with the scroll still in hand, clenched so tightly it had to be broken from his grip. They buried him in silence, with no markings. Some say he was honored, others say he was erased. Quirky details like that float between couriers like wind-blown seeds. You gather them as you go, small tokens of a job with no retirement. One you like especially is the tale of a courier who, fearing interception, would fake a limp and speak only in riddles until the message was safely handed off. Another swore by a charm, an ivory bead soaked in vinegar he kept in his mouth to prevent speaking under duress. You never learned if it worked, but you remember his smile. It was always slightly off. You pass a caravan at dusk, painted wagons and jingling bells announcing their presence with more confidence than you'll ever allow yourself. A woman offers you spiced nuts. You decline. A child stares at you, eyes narrowed. You nod, just once. He grins like he knows something you don't. That night, you dream again, not of danger or messages, but of being seen. You're sitting at a table, surrounded by those who recognize you, and they ask what you carry. You open your hands. They're empty, and yet, they nod, satisfied. You wake before dawn, back in the grove, cold biting your skin. The fire has gone out. Your fingers ache, but the message is gone, and the path ahead is clear. You rise. You walk. The sun hovers just above the ridge as you pass the city gate, where guards eye you with practiced indifference. You do not stop. You never stop. Your sandals are worn thin, your robe smells of travel, and your mouth tastes of iron from a small cut on your tongue you cannot remember earning. This is your third city in as many weeks, and each time you enter a new one, the walls feel higher, the eyes colder, and the space between yourself and the rest of the world just slightly wider. No one speaks to messengers unless they must. You slip through a maze of narrow alleys, following landmarks more instinctively than from memory. A cracked fresco of the goddess Anahita near the butcher's stall tells you you're close. You turn left at the building with the broken copper gutter, then duck beneath the archway of a collapsed shrine. The house you seek has no sign, no open door, no signifier of business or welcome. Only a single blue thread tied around a wooden beam. You knock 3 times, wait, then twice more. A slit opens in the door. A single eye peers out, bloodshot, suspicious. A grunt, then silence. You hear the latch draw back, and the door creaks open. You are let inside. The room is dim, lit only by a single oil lamp flickering against the stone walls. A woman stands behind a table, arms crossed, face unreadable. She doesn't greet you. Instead, She points to a shallow basin of water. You wash your hands, then your face. You spit into the corner and wait. Ritual is everything. In places like these, messages are less about content and more about cleanliness, purity of action, not thought. You draw the sealed packet from beneath your sash and place it gently on the table. She doesn't touch it. Not yet. First, she recites something in Old Avestan words you don't understand, though you've heard them before. Something about guardianship, purification, sacred transmission. Then she opens it. It's a small token this time. Not words, but a carved sigil, an image of a winged disc etched into obsidian, no bigger than your thumb. You don't know what it means, and you never will. But the woman does. Her eyes narrow, her mouth twists slightly, not in confusion, but recognition. She nods once and hides it beneath the floorboard. You will never speak of it again. Zoroastrian societies, particularly in Sasanian Persia, maintained intricate systems of sacred communication. Temples and priestly orders relied on coded objects and ritual phrases rather than conventional letters, believing the written word could be misread, misused, or corrupted. Historians still debate whether this secrecy was a theological safeguard or simply a way to centralize control within the Fire Temple elite. Either way, you carry more symbols than script these days and fewer truths than you once believed. Before you leave, the woman offers you something rare, a cup of goat's milk warmed with dates and sprinkled with saffron. It tastes like memory, rich, cloying, and kind. You nod in thanks, and though no one says it, the air shifts. Your presence is acknowledged. If not respected, then at least tolerated. You spend that night in a borrowed attic, surrounded by tools of trades you don't understand: bronze rods, dyed fabrics, dried herbs wrapped in linen. The ceiling creaks under the weight of pigeons nesting above, and you count them, slowly, until sleep carries you under. The next morning brings rain, soft and persistent, like being touched by silk over and over again. You wrap your cloak tighter, but it does little. You're already soaked before you reach the gates. You move past them anyway. The mud slows your pace, and your sandals squelch with every step. But you keep going. This next path is long and lonely. You pass a procession on the road, priests in white robes with face veils, reciting hymns as they walk barefoot across the earth. You lower your head in respect, though they don't acknowledge you. One of them carries a cage of fire, the embers barely glowing beneath a layer of ash. You wonder what it's like to tend flame instead of words. Perhaps no easier, perhaps worse. Half a day's walk brings you to a resting house, known among couriers as the silent stop. No one speaks there. No greetings, no questions, no names. You eat what's given, you sleep if allowed, and you leave as you came. A sign above the lintel reads, "Tongues can slip, silence cannot." Inside, you meet another courier. He looks older than you, but walks with a smoother gait. He nods as you pass, and you both sit beside the same fire, watching the same pot of barley porridge bubble over low heat. Neither of you speaks, but in the shared rhythm of your spoon scraping bowls, there is recognition. He offers you a small square of cloth red, with a white stitched arrow pointing north. You accept it and trade a piece of parchment marked with 3 circles and a line. You both nod. These are not messages. These are warnings. Codes passed between messengers to mark danger, deception, or betrayal ahead. One such warning you once received came too late. A folded leaf marked with black charcoal dots. You ignored it. You were nearly ambushed 3 hours later. Ever since, you keep a watchful eye even on leaves blown across your path. Some are just nature, some are not. The next morning, the older courier is gone. His bowl is washed and turned upside down, his presence erased. This is the way. By mid-morning, the road narrows, winding into a gorge flanked by steep cliffs. The rain has turned the path to clay, slick and unstable. You lose footing twice, catching yourself with bloodied palms. But you continue, because that's what you do. The message you carry now is not even physical, only words committed to memory. Names, locations, dates, spoken once, then never again. If caught, you are to say nothing. If pressed, you are to forget. You've trained for this, but you wonder if forgetting might someday become permanent. In a small cave carved into the canyon wall, you wait. You light no fire. You leave no trace. Hours pass. Then footsteps. A girl appears, no older than 12, wrapped in wool. She says a single phrase. The reed bends at moonrise. You respond as trained. But the roots remain still. She nods. She leaves. You follow. The forest you enter next is not listed on any official map. Locals call it the Whispering Grove, though no one ever whispers within it. The trees here are dense, old, and strangely bent as if they've been listening too long and started to lean toward each other. Even the birds hold their songs in this part of the world. Only your breath and your boots interrupt the silence. And even then, only briefly. Moss covers everything, damp and bright. It grows in the grooves of your hands. It feels, and on the edge of your memory. This is not your usual route, but for this message, no road is safe. A lord in the east was overthrown 3 days ago. His loyalists are being hunted. The phrase you carry is small, only 7 words long, but those 7 could reignite a rebellion or end it entirely. You don't know which. You don't need to. That's the rule. Messengers must carry truth without interpretation. Meaning only makes things heavier. Halfway through the grove, you find a marker, a split tree painted with crimson ash. This is the place. You turn west, then count 32 paces, and descend into a shallow ravine nearly swallowed by ivy. There's a cave mouth ahead, little more than a shadow beneath tangled roots. You kneel, pull back the leaves, and crawl inside. The cave smells of clay and smoke. A single torch flickers in the distance. You hear it before you see him, a man breathing heavily through his nose, like someone who hasn't spoken aloud in months. He sits cross-legged on a stone slab, eyes half closed, palms up. His robes are yellowed with age, and a scar runs across his cheek in a perfect crescent. When he opens his eyes, you feel the weight of recognition. He knows you. You do not know him. You say the phrase. He nods, repeats it, then says, "The other half." You hesitate. He sighs. They never tell the full message to one runner anymore, do they? You shake your head. Good, he mutters. They're learning. He thanks you with a bowl of spiced lentils, warm, but dry. You eat in silence. In the ancient Persian Empire, particularly under the Achaemenid kings, royal couriers were famed for their loyalty and speed. Herodotus once remarked, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers," a line later borrowed by modern postal services. But what most don't realize is that these messengers were also deeply mistrusted by those they served. Many were deliberately kept ignorant of their own roots. Others were trained only to memorize fragments, words without grammar, locations without meaning, so that torture would yield no revelation. Historians still debate whether this was purely for security, or a method of institutional control to keep runners from growing into spies themselves. The man before you is one of those runners, retired, perhaps exiled. He doesn't say, but you can tell by the tattoos on his wrist, 3 dots in a triangle, marking the silent tongue, rank only given to messengers who served in the king's night court, the kind of posts where wrong syllables meant someone's death. He gives you a new destination, a village burned last year, now slowly rebuilding. You've been there once, back when the air still smelled of ash and wet stone. It feels farther now, because of distance, but because of memory. The path down from the grove is steep. Your ankle twists twice on loose rock, and once you nearly fall entirely. But you keep going, because that's what you do. At a river crossing, you meet a boy selling dried fish and copper bracelets. You trade a copper pin from your cloak for directions. He points without speaking. He knows what you are. Children always do. That night, you sleep under a felled cedar, the bark slick with dew and insects. You dream of your first delivery, the one where you carried not a word, but a tooth. You were told it was from a dead queen. No explanation, only instructions. Hand it to the midwife. Say nothing else. You still wonder what it meant, whether the child she birthed that night ever knew. When dawn comes, so does fog, thick and curling. Visibility shrinks. Sounds grow distorted. You press forward, guided more by instinct than sight. Footfalls echo when they shouldn't. Once, you stop, certain someone follows. But when you turn, there's no one. Only fog and trees. Then you hear it, a whisper, faint but real. A child's voice, a woman's breath. You pause. Another whisper. Not words, just shapes of sound. Some say old messengers left warnings in forests like these, carved into bark or sung to the wind, hoping they'd reach someone someday. You speak nothing. You listen. And then, you run. By the time you reach the village ruins, your feet are bloodied, and your cloak is torn. But you find the meeting place, a well capped with slate, beside a scorched sycamore. A woman waits there, veiled in blue. She doesn't greet you. She simply asks, which bird returns first in spring? You respond, the one who forgot to leave. She nods. Then she walks away. You do not follow. Your role is done. You collapse beside the well, listening to the wind blow over broken stones. You think of how many words you've carried, how many secrets pass through your mouth unspoken. You wonder how many others walked this path and never returned. Not because they failed, but because they vanished like words whispered into fog. Your fingers ache. Every joint crackles when you move. It's not from injury, but from the constant clutching scrolls, tokens, knotted cords, all the strange cargo a messenger must carry that is not quite a letter, not quite a weapon. Today's delivery is more delicate than either. You carry a fragment of prophecy, not from a priest or oracle, but from a dying poet in a garden full of vultures. He whispered it to a noble's ear, and you were told to repeat it, exactly once, to a man who answers to a different crowd. The message is more breath than commands. 6 lines of verse. No names. No context. You repeat them in your mind as you walk, not because you fear forgetting, but because you fear remembering too well. As you pass through a sun-baked pass dotted with ruined towers, your sandals slip on gravel. The wind pulls at your cloak, lifting it like a teasing ghost. You pull it tighter. At your waist, the carved seal you were given dangles from a cord. It bears no symbol you recognize, just a jagged mark like a scratch on purpose. You were told not to show it, only to drop it into a jar at a doorway. The man inside would know what to do. That's all they ever say. He'll know. Halfway across the plain, a rider appears behind you. You hear the hooves before you see the shape. A black horse, small and muscular, and a woman cloaked in red atop it. Her veil is tied back, revealing the sharp curve of her jaw. She doesn't speak, just matches your pace. After a while, she says, "What's your burden?" You answer, "A fragment." She nods, as if that explains everything. "I carry a whisper," she replies. "We're in the same trade." For an hour, you walk beside her. She never offers a name, and neither do you. In the Achaemenid Empire, messengers often operated in pairs, sometimes for speed, sometimes for security, but it was also said that pairs allowed one to watch the other. Trust no one, even the one beside you. Historians still debate whether the dual messenger system arose from tactical necessity or royal paranoia. Either way, it lives on. The two of you camp together by a dried-up well, the stones cracked and full of spider nests. She shares a packet of dates. You offer salted figs. She shows you a trick how to fold parchment and chew it until the ink becomes readable on your tongue. You try it, laughing softly as the taste of iron bleeds into your gums. When she sleeps, she does so with one eye open, not metaphorically. You notice it around midnight, when the fire dims, one eye still watching the trees. You try not to ask questions. At dawn, she is gone. You reach the city by noon, or what's left of it. Sand has reclaimed half its streets. The central dome is collapsed, but people still trade in its shadow: pottery, grain, knives, lies. You keep your hood up. You step around children playing with bones tied to string. You find the door, a green awning, a cracked lintel, a jar of saffron beside it. You drop the seal into the jar. The door opens 5 seconds later. Inside, a man hands you a cup of cold tea and a paper fan. He says nothing. You deliver the lines of poetry. He writes them on the back of a broken ledger. He offers no payment. You bow and leave. That's the rule. You're almost to the gate when 2 guards stop you. They don't look like locals. One is missing half a nose. The other wears a ring of silver keys around his neck. They ask your name. You give none. They ask your trade. You say, "I'm a courier." They ask what you carry. You say, memories. They laugh. They pull you aside. They search you. They find the scroll case with nothing inside. They find the pouch of powder you were given for sore feet. They taste it wrongly, assuming it's poison. They decide to hold you until someone comes. Someone always comes. In the holding tent, you meet another prisoner, an old man with ink-stained fingers and a voice like sand over stone. He used to be a message scribe, he says, long ago, before the scribes were replaced by runners who remember. He tells you about his last job engraving lies into royal proclamations, knowing they'd never be read aloud. Words are weapons, he says, but only when believed. You ask him, do you regret it? He says, only the truths I buried. When the guards return, they bring a coin, black, with a hole in the middle. They show it to you. You nod. They let you go. You never find out what the coin meant. On the road again, the sun burns your shoulders, but you don't mind. The heat reminds you you're still moving. You repeat the verses again, not because you need to, just so they won't vanish. That night, under a full moon, you find a note tucked inside your sandal strap. It reads only one line. Your shadow speaks louder than your feet. You sleep with a stone beneath your head and dream of ink melting into water, of letters that refuse to stay on parchment, of birds that carry secrets in their feathers and never land. You wake in the chill before dawn. Your fire has gone out. You do not relight it. Instead, you watch the stars fade, replaced by a thin orange blade slicing across the horizon. Somewhere behind you, the man with the ink-stained fingers has been buried or burned or simply forgotten. In front of you is another city, another gate, another door that may or may not open. You rise, your limbs slow and stubborn, as if mourning the last journey's end before the new one can begin. You are not alone. You never are. Other messengers walk the same road, though few meet face to face. You see traces of them, hoofprints in dry mud, a broken sandal strap caught on a thorn bush, a burnt scrap of coated parchment fluttering near a riverbank. Every sign reminds you. The road remembers everyone, even those the empires have erased. You descend a winding pass between cliffs that whisper wind from long-dead languages. At the bottom is a caravan stop. 3 donkeys, 1 merchant, 2 guards, and a woman feeding figs to a parrot. No one speaks. It is understood that talk is not free here. By midday, you're crossing a dry basin where nothing grows but superstition. You are told not to whistle here, not to hum, not even to mutter. Long ago, a messenger disappeared in this place and returned a week later, eyes glassy, carrying a message no one had sent. He died that night, repeating a word no one could translate. Historians still debate whether this was madness, myth, or merely a failed cipher that gained a ghostly reputation. But to this day, no one speaks in the basin. You don't either. At the edge of the basin is an old way station, half collapsed, covered in claw marks and beeswax. A satchel hangs from a wooden spike above the door. You know the signal. Someone has left a message in plain sight, expecting someone like you to collect it. Inside, you find a piece of parchment folded into fourths and sealed with black thread. It smells of myrrh. You do not open it. You do not read it. You simply tuck it into the inner fold of your sash and continue walking. By evening, the sky is soft with ash-colored clouds. The city ahead seems carved from the dusk itself. Low walls, burnt towers, and a temple whose roof shines like a rusted mirror. You arrive during prayer. Bells echo, not from metal but from voices layered in chant. You are directed, without speaking, to the west gate. A scribe waits for you, sitting cross-legged beside a bronze brazier. He takes your letter, weighs it in his palm like a fruit, and nods. 2 more, he says. That's all. You bow and leave. You are not paid. Not now. That's not how this one works. But in 2 days, a merchant will find you in a market and press a handful of pearls into your hand. No words. That's the agreement. If the pearls are white, the message was true. If black, it was intercepted. If red, well, you've never received red. Your bed that night is a flat roof lined with tiles. You stare at the moon through the curls of incense rising from a window below. You do not sleep. You recite the next message to yourself. You learned it earlier that morning from a child with silver teeth who appeared from nowhere, sang it like a lullaby, and ran off before you could respond. It is only 4 words long. The words make no sense. You memorize them anyway. When you close your eyes, you remember the woman on the horse. You remember the ink scribe in the holding tent. You remember the message scratched on your sandal. You remember the sealed pouch you never opened, and the city that paid you in silence. You remember all the words you were told never to speak aloud again. Some still live behind your teeth. That's the cost. The Zoroastrian priests once said that silence was a form of fire burning, invisible, purifying. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps all messengers are just slow fires moving through the dark, each carrying the heat of meaning from one heart to another. Some messages are too heavy for ink, some words too dangerous to write. In ancient Persia, some runners were known to tattoo the message onto their own skin. If caught, they were flayed. You have never done that, but sometimes, you wonder if the words are burning through your chest anyway. When the final job is done, you are told to rest. You cannot. Your hands twitch in sleep. Your feet flex, tracing phantom paths across imaginary deserts. You still rise before dawn, still check your sash for hidden notes. You walk the alleys with your eyes, scanning doorframes for signals. Even when there's nothing left to say, your mouth shapes old messages in the dark. You are a courier, and silence is your cargo. You've made it to the end for now. The final scroll has been delivered, the last syllable spoken, the sandals unlaced. And as you sit beside the coals of a dying fire, letting the silence settle over your shoulders like a well-worn cloak, you begin to understand something ancient messengers knew all too well. Sometimes, the greatest meaning hides in what's left unsaid. In a world shaped by empires and erased by time, there were once people who carried entire wars or peace offerings in the hollow of their throat. Their burden wasn't just parchment or symbols. It was trust, memory, risk, the idea that one word could shift a kingdom's fate. You've walked their roads in your mind tonight, climbed dusty ridges, passed through markets where no one smiled, met women who spoke in riddles and children who delivered secrets as casually as they tossed stones. You've swallowed the strange weight of knowing something that could never be spoken aloud. But now, the story rests, like your satchel at the door, like the flame at the temple's edge. And if, by chance, you've carried a fragment of this journey with you, if a whisper of ancient wind still lingers in your thoughts, then the message wasn't lost. It was delivered, and you were the final stop.